Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. President. I think I will pick up the debate where Senator Chief Charumbira left it off, because as we move towards the end of the debate, I would also like to applaud the manner in which members of the opposition have debated, and the fact that our leadership, the whips, and our leader, the leader of Senate, and the leader of the opposition, allowed each and every MP to debate according to their conscience. So we didn't walk a rigid party line. I think that shows magnanimity. It shows understanding on the part of the leader. And yet, we think that at the end of the day, our position is going to be one which tends to carry the debate and carry the bill. And so we managed to adeptly maneuver all those political vicissitudes. Mr. President, as I rise to interrogate this bill, many of the issues have been attended to in the National Assembly. And the consequence is that what is presented before us is a more polished and streamlined version of the bill which was published initially in the Gazette and taken to the people on public consultations. This demonstrates that the views of the people, as well as those of the people's representatives, have been taken on board by the minister to a large extent. And this is something that we applaud. Many sections have been removed and the people's views have been accommodated. I think this is a huge step forward. This House, however, Mr. President, does not exist as a formality, but must exercise its solemn duty to still interrogate these important issues presented to the nation at this, what I would describe as a momentous time in our history. In his speech, the minister did demonstrate how this is a momentous time in our history, showing the extent to which this clause is being debated. Mr. President, let me at the onset invite the Honorable Minister to consider a matter that relates to Clause 23. Initially, Clause 21, which repeals Part 6 of Chapter 12 of the Constitution, dealing with the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. I know we will get into detail with that in the committee stage. I propose that there is a technical or consequent amendment which is needed to clean up in the committee stage to ensure that over and above repealing Part 6, there is need to delete all references, therefore, to the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission in the rest of the text of the Constitution, e.g. Section 232, Paragraph E. I think it's a technical issue. Just to demonstrate that Senate can also see things. Secondly, the NPRC is an institution that served an important purpose. Yes, it has come to its sunset. It must be removed to clean up. We cannot continue to carry text referring to an institution that has seen its sunset and has lapsed. But it served an important purpose. At one time we accepted that it serves an important purpose. We cannot, therefore, Mr. President, just drop those sections without examining how we can hedge against creating a dangerous vacuum where this commission stood as a vanguard. The most important function that the commission has, or had, was in section 252 was paragraph A, which was to ensure post-conflict justice, healing, and reconciliation. And when you look at Vision 2030, you know, the theme is reconciliation. This government's thrust is reconciliation. I don't think this section, that function of that commission, is inimic to the ideals and objectives of this government. We submit that this should be retained, Mr. President. And there is no way as a serious nation that we can jettison such an important function which fits into the vision that the minister spoke to in terms of building and developing this nation. I therefore will propose in committee, Mr. President, that this function should simply be added to the functions of the Zimbabwe. One line, add to their functions. Should there arise any necessity in the future, you will have an institution that can broadly deal with that. You can then legislate to beef it up if you want to add and subtract and to give it structure. But we believe this proposal by the Senate will save you when history looks at you to say, did you think we could just throw away that kind of provision and not retain an iota from it which is meaningful to our society? This is going to be my proposal. If this clause is accepted, Mr. President, this would really motivate me and animate me to support this bill. In spite of other inadequacies that have been pointed out by the expansive debate, whether in the National Assembly or in public discourse. Because we would have won something, would have gotten something meaningful. Another quick cleaning up issue which we will raise in committee is section 239, which we propose, well, should be cleaned up to reflect that ZEC no longer conducts the election of the president, but supervises it. However, I would like to hear what the minister's views are on this matter, but I'm merely highlighting that it has exercised my mind. I'm sure that he will have a response to it. Clause 14A, and these are other quick ones, I'll raise them. The reference to the President of the Supreme Court, when in other parts of the text it's Judge President of the Supreme Court. I think again it's a cleaning up issue. We'll go into detail with it. Let me hone in on the clause that also motivates and animates me. In particular, clause 3. This is the contentious one, which reintroduces the election of the President through transforming the Parliament into an electoral college. In so doing, I wish to address that what I consider to be a central constitutional question before us. What kind of democracy do we seek to build in Zimbabwe? For many people, democracy begins and ends with voting. It is often assumed that the more direct the vote, the more democratic the outcome. And you know, I'm going to be criticized for this debate for my views on this. But as you criticize me, Zimbabweans, listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I want to be criticized on the merits of what I'm saying. It is often assumed that the more direct the vote, the more democratic the outcome. Yet constitutional design is simply not that simple, Mr. President. The real question is whether our institutions promote inclusion or exclusion. So I have a totally different way from you of looking at this question. Consensus or domination, national cohesion or permanent division. Clause 3 requires us to precisely confront these questions. I'll go a bit into our constitutional history, Mr. President. It is important that we approach this debate with historical honesty. Many Zimbabweans have come to assume that the direct election of an executive president is the only democratic model available to us. That assumption is historically inaccurate. The minister flagged it. At independence in 1980, Zimbabwe adopted a parliamentary system under the Lancaster House Constitution. Executive authority was vested in the Prime Minister. The President occupied a largely ceremonial office and was elected indirectly, as was the Prime Minister himself. The philosophy underlying that arrangement, that Parliament, representing the diverse political voices of the nation, served as the forum through which national leadership emerged. The executive president that many now regard as normal did not exist at independence. It was introduced through Constitutional Amendment number 7 of 1987, following a political settlement, the Unity Accord, and thereafter Zimbabwe held its first direct presidential election under the executive president only in 1990. And let me note that, or maybe let me leave that one, I'll get it at the end. I don't want to say something political. Clause 3 is therefore not some radical constitutional experiment, Mr. President. It revives a constitutional tradition that formed part of Zimbabwe's original constitutional design. Madam President, I support Clause 3 because it addresses one of the greatest weaknesses in our current constitutional arrangement. We have always said so. It's just that in the opposition there are many voices, and there are some voices which are ignored merely because they're not saying what the rest of everybody wants them to say. But it's time these voices came to the fore, and right now this is the opportunity. The current system is built upon majoritarian assumptions. Whoever secures the largest number of votes governs. Whoever belongs to the majority wins. Whoever does not belong to the majority loses. But constitutional democracy was never intended to be a dictatorship of numbers, Mr. President. One of the greatest mistakes in our political discourse is the assumption that democracy and majoritarianism are identical concepts. They are not. Majoritarianism is one method of making decisions. Democracy is something much richer, Mr. President. It concerns participation, representation, inclusion, accountability, and the protection of minority votes. Under the present system, smaller parties are routinely treated as though they do not matter. Their supporters are told their votes are wasted. Their ideas are dismissed because they lack numerical dominance, and their participation is tolerated but rarely regarded as consequential. In every election cycle, citizens are effectively told that political relevance belongs only to the largest formations. This is not healthy multi-party democracy. This is a constitutional culture that marginalizes diversity of political opinions. If you want to crucify me for these beliefs, crucify me. But examine what I'm saying. And I challenge you to test where I'm weak and where I am wrong. Why Clause 3 strengthens multi-party democracy? Madam President, it seeks to correct this imbalance that I speak of. It does so by ensuring that leadership emerges through engagement, persuasion, and consensus building among representatives elected by the people. Under this model, every parliamentary seat matters, every political formation matters, every elected representative matters. Even political parties with modest representation become relevant because their support may prove decisive in the formation of a governing consensus. Candidates seeking presidency must persuade everyone. I'll cut because time is moving. There are other things that we have talked about Clause 3. Zimbabwe is a homogeneous society. And I think I've already made the point on consensus. I want to skip everything about Clause 3 and go further, Madam President. I respectfully wish to submit that the constitutional conversation be
order.
Yes, Mr. President.
I know, Honorable Phulu, I know you want to say quite a lot, but it's 3 times now you have called me Madam President. I am not a madam. Please have mercy on me.
Mr. President, I apologize for that. It's just that I'm trying to skip large portions because I'm looking at time. I apologize. But further, Mr. President, if I may go a step further, I wish to respectfully submit that the constitutional conversations before us ought not to end with Clause 3. I just want to add something. Indeed, if the concern that motivates this amendment is the creation of a more inclusive and representative participatory democracy, we must eventually confront the limitations of the first past the post system itself. One day we will get there. So I'm merely putting a pointer that it's logical that we must go there. I've talked about the missed opportunity on national healing, and I won't go back to that, but I hope we will cover that when we get to the committee. To mention in one line, to commend the decisions of the National Assembly on the Gender Commission, Mr. President, and on the independence of our traditional leaders. I want to talk about Clause 4. I wish to briefly say that Clause 4, which proposes extending the term of office from 1 to 7 years, is another one which should be looked through the lens of development and constitutional experience rather than political rhetoric. My friend has already traveled that route, but certainly I wanted to say such a move cannot honestly be described as unprecedented or inherently undemocratic. Let us examine whether in this case it is so. I am coming to my conclusion, Mr. President.
Order. You have got 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. President. The future of Zimbabwe, in conclusion, cannot be built upon permanent political exclusion. It cannot be built upon constitutional arrangements that tell some citizens that their voices are too small to matter. It cannot be built on a winner-take-all philosophy that transforms political competition into a struggle for domination. The future must be built on dialogue, consensus, accommodation, genuine multi-party democracy, and this is what these clauses offer, and hence this is what this bill offers. It reminds us that democracy is not simply a rule of the majority. It is the inclusion of minorities and the counting of votes, the recognition, as I said, that everyone matters. For these reasons, Mr. President, I support this bill, subject to a few reservations, which I hope will be clarified in committee. I commend the retention of the Gender Commission, independence of our traditional leaders, and urge this House to strengthen this bill through the inclusion of a more robust framework for national hearing, as we requested. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Senator Phulu. I recognize the Honorable Senator Chawangu.
Mr. President, honorable members, fellow citizens, I know they are watching and listening. Mr. President, I rise today merely to debate the text before us. But the spirit of a moment that changed our nation forever. When Father Zimbabwe, the late Dr. Joshua Nkomo, signed the Unity Accord with the late President Robert Mugabe on 22 December 1987, he told Zimbabwe